What's up, chat? Oh, we slipping. Getting ready here. Remarkably flat in here, I will say that. I will say that. Mic check, 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 check. Mic check for chat. Do I? How? Double mic. Hello. Let's see. Oh. Okay. Very good. Very good. Make this a little bigger. Yeah, we got the classic one move here, and then we just go entirely sideways from 11 o'clock. This is an interesting day, to say the least. Yeah, what's up, Guido? Yeah, I'm definitely doing better back-wise, which is very good. That took about a month to fix itself, but we're doing okay. How are you doing, sir? What's up, Tom? Welcome to the party. A little bit of a little bit more support, I'd say, up here than I would have thought otherwise. But we are still fixing up to close below that 24 position, at the very least. Yeah, Max Payne's still solidly around 23 here. A lot of stuff still in the money. Let's go to unusual whales. A lot of stuff. I mean, not a lot of movement yesterday. A lot of stuff off the board, kind of down in the money here. Really interesting position to see close in the money is 23.5. That looks like it's going to close in the money unless they really start dropping this right here. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, Guido. Pretty sure we'd see that fall out of the money this week. It may be insufficiently or excessively skewed short. It is, if we look closely here, more closely, we are really just hanging right on that. What is this? 200-day moving average right here. We opened right on top of it, and we're just kind of right up there. I would not be surprised, right? I would not be surprised if they somehow, like, basically starting in the next like 10 minutes, they dropped us down to the 500 right here, because that's 5 cents below. 500 right now is at 23.45. That's 5 cents below that 23.50 position. If they could just bleed us a little bit there. Yeah, right down here, right? Right down here. It's also the 500-hour level. So the 500-day and the 500-hour are the same one, but we were tight here the whole day. Is the thing. We showed support there 2 times this week, actually. So Tuesday, that's what we lifted up off of. Had this kind of 3-day, 2-ish, well, mostly after hours, but kind of VWAP move thing here. Support intraday on Thursday down there, right around, what is that? Yeah, 23.78. A little bit of support off the open, a little bit. We could. It looks far when you look at it on the hourly, but yeah, it'd be interesting. It may be a question of what happens with rolling those positions. Well, that's right. Yeah, that's right. We could do that. We could do a little of that. Yeah, I do have to get to that. Do you have a particular some basics question you'd like to talk about, Agent J1B? What is money? Okay. We could do what is money. How would I structure this? Let's see. Let's bring up like a doodle pad. Where's my doodle pad? There it is. Let's get you over here, doodle pad. All right. We still got this. We still got this fun doodle. We can do that. Talk about what is money. So let's see. Can I save this? Don't use this site. We can do graph paper. So let's get maybe the old text box here. Actually, this is a good question because I saw this like post today come up on X about Richard Nixon being the first like president to do calculus to win re-election or something like that. It's Math Cafe and maybe Math Guy TFL. No, who is this guy? Let's see. I saw a post today about Richard Nixon and calculus. Can you bring it up? But the gist of the post, in any case, was about derivatives in the sense of inflation being a derivative of money. So we'll define, I'll probably do a definition of derivatives. And we'll talk about question, why is money a derivative? What does it have a derivative relationship to? Okay, JB1, my wife is already excited about next winter. She really wants to. Right, we didn't go to Thailand this year. She really wants to go back to Thailand in December of this year, and bring our new baby and go, and maybe like her mom too, and go just hang out in Thailand for a while again. So I don't know. It's on the possible agenda for some more Thailand streams. We'll bring back the real 21st century Renaissance experience. Talking about, yeah, she loves Thailand. She loves Thailand. There's a lot to like. There's a lot to like, except I guess the methamphetamine addictions. But we just abstain from that part. It's pretty good otherwise. So I guess we can start then with this idea of in answering this question about what money is. It's very important to understand what a derivative is. So money we can call an abstraction of value. So money is we could say a representation of human value, which is abstracted, and we could actually call it of potential human value, abstracted into a tokenized form. Okay. So a lot of people will say things like, money. We'll talk about finding. We'll talk about money like it is value. But money is really let's say a representation of things that can be valued. Let's say it's a way of storing human value, the ability for human beings to value things, in a sort of undifferentiated state. So human beings, of course, let's say we are valuing creatures. Everything that is alive has an ability to value. It's something that arises out of, especially we would say phenomenologically or experientially, it arises from our nervous system. It comes out of, let's say, our experience of ourselves, right? It's built into us. And, it's even more fundamental than that. It can be difficult, let's say, potentially to conceive of value outside of that affective core. Affective core meaning, like our emotions, our experiences, our instincts, our sensations, things like this. Because that's, let's say, our the prima facie layer by which human beings come to understand the world is through these different sensations. So things like, something you might call hunger and affect, right? It's not really an emotion. It's not exactly an instinct. It's more of an urge, right? You feel it, and it tells you very important information, and it moves you to perceive of your landscape differently, right? To perceive of the world around you in a different configuration. And so, what alternatively reconfigures that landscape is a redistribution of, yeah, for lack of a better term, value. Um, Things that have strength with respect to your attention, from valor, actually in Latin, valor, or from valeo valere, which means to become strong, something like that, in a healthy way. So when you say goodbye to someone, for example, in Latin, you say to them vale, which is where you basically you wish them health, but in such a way that that they become strong. So like salve is health, but it's which you say hello. It's like health to you in a healing way. Wale is health to you in a strength way. Um, so that which has value is that which is something that possesses this sort of quality of strength to capture your attention. So something like value itself is what reconfigures the world around us. It is, as value shifts, the world shifts with it. And so the way that we perceive of value in a visceral form is through our affects. So our urges, our instincts, our passions, emotions, things like this. So, for example, pain is a way that we experience value. Hunger is a way that we experience value. Joy is a way that we experience value. Love, envy, greed, determination, things like this, right? Or maybe not determination, but something like interest, like whatever kind of fixes and holds your gaze. Something like curiosity. These all assign or weight value in the world differently, and they accordingly act as these sort of anchor points for how we configure and reconfigure our behavior as human beings, right? They govern, they act as motors, essentially. A motor is that which causes you to move. So the emergence of value in the world through our perception of it, right? I mean, it governs our perceptions. This also moves us in order to, it brings us into a state of knowing how to act unto that behavior, or unto that value, let's say, right? The value itself tells us where we ought to go, what we ought to do, right? And configuring the landscape, right, is not just a question of, how is this place of things different now that I value it differently, but how does the world around me tell me that I should behave based on what I value about it? So, okay, a lot of this is all sort of discussing various concepts that have to do with value. But it's important to understand this, right, to map out and have a good understanding of what value is, right? Because when you hear Wall Street stuff all the time, right, you hear things, maybe like money making and things like that. It can be easy to mistake money for value. But money itself is merely a representation of value. It's a non-specific representation of value. Okay, so hunger, let's say, hunger is experiential, but hunger is an experiential proxy. Let's say hunger itself is derivative of the values which are attendant to nourishment. So, right, so this is when I say that affects themselves are actually derivative. And this will lead me, of course, to define, of course, what derivative means. So whatever is derivative, or what has a derivative relationship to something that underlies it, is something like it is a condensed way of signifying meaning, which is abstracted from the thing itself in order to make it presentable in a more compact form, in a more easily decipherable form. So you almost want to think about it sort of like a zip file, right? Or let's say you have, 1,000 different, you have 1,000 different documents on your computer, right? And each of those documents is as long as, an academic book. And at the level of understanding, right, what this is, right? If you want to have basically like a basic idea of what to do, let's say, about all that information, well, you could go through and you could read every word, and then you could synthesize that into this very, very robust idea about what those 1,000 academic books are actually talking about. Or you could put them down into this folder icon on your desktop and then label that like, theories of value, let's say, right? And so then let's say if this comes up, then I know that, okay, then how to use everything that's in this. It's a whole lot of information, but then I know, okay, behaviorally, procedurally, I know what to do with respect to this. Okay, I can click on this, I can open this up, and I can acquire a deeper understanding of a theory of value. That's what this is for. So if you look at, say, that folder icon on your desktop, and it says theory of value on it, that doesn't actually tell you anything about theory of value. It doesn't unfold for you. It doesn't actually teach you anything about theory of value itself. But it does tell you how you can, what you can actually do in the face of 1,000 different documents, academic book length documents that have to do with the theory of value, right? You can click on that, open it up, and then all that information is in there, and you can read it, digest it, learn about it, represent it alternatively. Okay, something like that. So if you were to use a correlate in the affective space, and you would say emotion, right? Emotion doesn't tell you anything about nutrition. It doesn't tell you how it works. It doesn't tell you, how long it's going to work. It doesn't tell you things like macronutrients. It doesn't tell you about energy. It doesn't tell you about calories. It doesn't tell you about micronutrients. It doesn't tell you about respiration. It doesn't tell you about digestion. It doesn't tell you about what your kidneys do, or what your intestines do, or your stomach, or your acid, or your stomach pH, or anything like that. Hunger doesn't tell you anything of the kind. It does not tell you at all how it works. It only tells you what you need to do. It gives you a signal about what you need to do in order to address that mechanism on its own, right? Okay. It tells you, automatically, I got to go look for whatever, right? I got to go look for something to satiate that hunger. And you kind of just know what that is. But and you've been taught part of that, right? How to solve that problem, right? So part of it's handed to you culturally, but some of it's instinctual, right? You just know. Um, so affect has a derivative relationship to the mechanisms that actually govern your body as a very, very intensely complex, formally complex system. It doesn't tell you how your body works. It just tells you what you need to do in order to keep the system going. And even then, not super precisely. It can be very difficult to figure that out sometimes. But that's what it tells you. Just like animals, right? Animals know, they don't know anything about how it works. It just it just works. So that's a principle of derivation. It simplifies something in order to make something far more complex apprehensible. Apprehensible I use as a term instead of comprehensible. Comprehensible means, okay, you can understand how something works, underneath everything. That's comprehension, let's say. But apprehension is to know what to do about something. So instinctually, our instincts tell us as human beings we don't really need to know to survive, although it can be more optimal to have a comprehension of how those systems work. We don't really need to have too comprehensive an understanding of the systems about how digestion or reproduction or any of that work. We just need to know what to do. We just need to apprehend how to satisfy those systems in an optimal way. In a good enough way, let's say. So money, in a certain sense, has a derivative relationship to value, or perhaps to human aspect, or to human affect, let's say. Money is not a disambiguation, but a representation of value, but non-specifically assigned, right? So hunger as a derivative of the values of the human body is assigned to a specific set of values, okay? You cannot satisfy your need to breathe by or your need to eat, let's say, by breathing. You cannot solve your need to eat by drinking. You cannot solve your need to eat by going for a run. I mean, all of those things may be required on the way to satisfying that. So it's involved in the complex behavioral scheme that's required, let's say, to acquire food. But ultimately, if you do not actually receive nutrition, if you do not get energy and nutrients, then you cannot satisfy your hunger. Okay, so it's a very specific set of values is mapped by an individual affect. You might say that money, in a way, is an alienation or an abstraction away of value in a non-specific form. So it's human value in a non-specific form, because we're the only ones that can use money. Okay, you can teach like monkeys to use money, but and they can participate in rudimentary commerce. And so they'll, spend the money on monkey values, which tends to generally just like instantly invent prostitution. Seems to be the case. But essentially there isn't really much commerce between human and monkey kind. It's really just us that can do that. So we can be more specific, and we can say that money itself is an abstraction of human value, right? Okay, important to say that, but in a non-specific form, because money can be exchanged for for any number of human values. Okay, you can use money in order to get something that will satisfy your hunger. You can use money in order to, um, in order to satisfy some urge of another kind. You can use it to, say, perform some more complex set of work in order to satisfy a number of different requirements. It can be used as a proxy for status. It can be used as as a proxy for the creation of things, right? And something like the need for shelter, the need for space, or something of the like. So it acts in this way both as a representation of value and as a store, let's say, of value, right? So human beings, for example, the way it works, right, in an economy is something like human beings can exert energy towards something, right? They can invest value in a particular direction that may not be in their interest, let's say, meaning really affectively in their interest. They are not interested in the thing for themselves. However, human beings may be offered an abstraction of potential value in exchange for energy invested in a direction which is not in their interest. And accordingly, it can be used to shape human interest and motivation. So, for example, many of us, in fact, myself included, I would bet that anybody in this chat right now has accepted money for something that, if they perhaps did not need to acquire currency, would not have engaged in that activity, right? Something for work, something of the like. If you haven't, I imagine you've lived a very blessed life. But maybe a job you wouldn't necessarily would have wanted to do if you just had unlimited free time to do as you would. But the necessities of needing to acquire this, or maybe support a family member, or just learn how to be a participating member in society, something like that. You've been incentivized, let's say, to take on a project or a task and invest energy in a particular direction, even though it's not something you wanted to do. And a part of what led you to do that was the fact that you could receive this representation of value abstracted into a form that then you could exchange for something that would be in your interest at a later date. So in essence, someone gets you to invest down a certain direction, in like your actual physical body energy, in a particular direction for the accomplishment of some goal. However, you yourself in that action do not value the product of the investment of your energy in absolute terms with respect to your capacity to value things as a human being. Your affective centers do not actually value anything at the end of that creative process, right? You invest your labor, you do some work, let's say you're, I don't know, cleaning up somebody's driveway, or, paving a driveway or something. You don't really like driveways. You don't really care about that person's driveway, but, that person says, all right, I'll give you $500 to just take 2 hours and, seal my driveway. Oh, $500, seal driveway, right? Why does that incentivize you? Because you recognize, well, all right, I don't care about this project, but if I do this project, I can exchange this energy, this effort, this attention, this time for something that I do value or will value in the future, right? Something either that I do value now or that I think I will value later. So in that way, your value gets stored up in the money. Your value can then, right, it's not at the end of this particular task, but it can then go in the money, and you can exchange the money for something you do value. Okay. So under these terms, right, under this sort of broader definition, we can think of money as a derivative of value and a representation thereof. Okay. So money itself is not value, but it can then function as a way for human value to be sort of packaged and then transported, let's say, through time. Yeah. So it's a really very, very interesting, very complex, very interesting, I guess, for lack of a better term, invention and system that we came up with, right? Very curious that somehow we happened upon this, the ability to do this. But it's important to recognize that money is not value itself, right? To be aware of that particular system, to be aware of the actual structuring of what is value to us, how we understand value at a very visceral level, right? You can't get a 2-year-old to care about money. A 2-year-old can't conceive of the abstraction of its own values outside of itself. So everyone, at least at some point in their life, has had that experience of being a child and not having their values abstracted from them. Now, a 2-year-old has 2-year-old's values, so it's not like they get extremely complex. But say in the biblical context, I see C6D6C6 is wishing me a very happy Lent here. Blessed Lent to you. This is something to think of in terms of the Gospels, right? Christ regularly says, let you be in some ways like a child, right? Let the little children come to me. Whoever, he is blessed whosoever makes himself like the least of these. Whosoever receives a child into his arms, right? Mark's gospel. Whosoever receives a child into his arms receives me. Whosoever receives me receives the one who sent me, being the implication, the source of all creation. So there's something like that, right? There's something to childhood and the configuration of childhood and the proper configuration of a childhood that is necessary to then also have a healthy relationship to what can be abstracted. To be able to go back to that time where each of us was, say, in perfect harmony with value itself, where value was not alienated necessarily outside of us. Now, great things can be done with the system of currency. But at the end of the day, it's important to remember that value that flows from us as human beings, from which is mapped, let's say, by our experience of our emotions, affect, interest, passion, that is really fundamental to money. Money is merely something that is built upon that. And if that system of human values becomes corrupted, becomes fractured, becomes confused, becomes muddled, then the system of money and currency, which is built on top of it, similarly will become out of order, right? Will become unhealthy in a certain sense. Yeah. So I hope that answers. Yeah, I think that hits all the point as far as a definition of money, and I hope that answered your question, Agent JB1. Something we can come back to there. I'd like to. I'm not sure if I'd use this in that particular playlist, but I'm sure there's a much more succinct way to put this down. I also think I tend to speak a bit faster earlier in the day with a cup of coffee. So because I noticed too, YouTube went ahead and disabled that feature where you can speed things up, which is kind of annoying. Unless you pay, unless everybody's got YouTube Premium, they did that thing. So you can't speed it up anymore, which is lame because I don't think I ever watched. Now essentially I like don't watch YouTube videos anymore because they're all too slow. That's the problem. I think YouTube did that to try to incentivize people to pay them a subscription, but then it just disincentivized me from watching YouTube. So I don't know. But I want to come back here to CCCC6. Should have played. Did the baby come? Not yet. Not yet. Baby hasn't arrived yet. Baby's estimated not to be here until the end of April. We did have third trimester screening, which is very good. Everything's looking good. She's on the smaller side a little bit, so she's going to be. She's right now for baby size. She's at 25th percentile, which is very good. It's going to make the delivery easier on mom. So we're very happy. We're very happy about that. Sharon, thanks very much for the congratulations. Very, very happy to have them from you. Let's take a look at some GameStop stuff now. Michael N47 says, what's your view on the warrants? Got some money sitting in the account waiting for a dip. Contemplating on buying shares to continue selling covered calls or warrants. So I don't trade the warrants. It's not necessarily because I particularly have anything against warrants, let's say. But a little pickup there. Interesting. We'll take a look at that price action in a second. But I will say the thing about warrants is they're a little difficult to predict. They do not follow their ideal pricing model. So options, for example, options can get a little off, but basically options do perform pretty close to how their pricing model should look. The warrants do not. The warrants are priced basically like options. They're priced according to the Black-Scholes model. They should more or less come out to about the same price as an October $32 call. Now, not exactly, because with the warrants, there is the possibility that the company could extend them, whereas there isn't a chance that a $32 call, for example, for October on the options market could be extended. So that's got to get priced in a bit. But again, they could just expire worthless like options. You just don't know. So there should be some component that should price them in like that, right? But currently they're priced something like 50 to 70% more than the options, which seems to be, and I know Ultimator's been posting about this. This is significantly above ideally where they should be. So that, because that's a really, it's rather opaque exactly how one would go about trying to predict pricing changes in the warrants. So I myself don't trade them. I do not invest. I don't invest. I have warrants from my share position. I've sold some, but yeah, it's a little. I don't necessarily like to trade something whose theoretical pricing doesn't really align with the thing itself, right? And in fact, when I look at them, because I can't short them, right? When I look at the theoretical pricing model says these things are way overvalued. Okay, well, I can't sell options on them, right? There's no warrant-specific, warrant-only options contract. There's no derivative of the warrants. The warrants themselves are a derivative. I can't sell, stuff on the warrants. So I can't go short. I can't flip my hold orientation on the warrants in the other direction. Now, so what does that leave me? Okay, if the theoretical pricing model is telling me they're overvalued, now I don't know what they could not be. That's not me saying I think they are overvalued. That's me saying I don't have a tool that tells me accurately what the pricing should be. And the theoretical pricing model that I do have, whether it's accurate or not, tells me that they're overvalued. I have no ability to make money on the downside if these things are overvalued. And I have no model that says, hey, here's what the warrants probably should be valued at. And oh, by the way, that's different than the theoretical one that's based on Black-Scholes, and it's lower, and there's potential upside that you could profit from here. Okay. So because of all those things, that's not a very high, that doesn't tell me I have a very high probability of profit by holding on to that particular instrument. I see risk. I don't understand the probabilities of my return, of positive returns on that. So that essentially becomes somewhat random for me. Just because I have to treat it as random because I don't have the necessary information otherwise. So as a result of these things, that's what goes into my thinking. And that says, I'd rather deploy my capital in a different way. I'd rather buy shares. Very, very straightforward. I can make profit on the downside with those. I can hedge that position meaningfully with other derivative products. I can hedge that position in the options market. I can't do that in warrants, right? Or in options, right? I could do some sort of complex options trade. Not in anything particularly complex right now. Just have shares and covered calls right now. So that's my position on the warrants. Obviously, if you have some idea, if you've been working on a pricing model for the warrants, and you think you have some insight into them, how they're going to work and how much they should be valued and versus how they are right now, and you think potentially they're undervalued, or potentially you're someone who has warrants on loan, you can short them or something like that, and so you have some sort of way to hedge that, or maybe you have some special derivative that none of the rest of us have that you can use. You might be able to. There's probably some way that you could go short with the options, right? The shares and warrants options contracts, the GME1 chain, but the liquidity on that chain is very bad. That's number one. So it's very difficult to enter and exit trades at an efficient price, let's say. And you also need to have shares anyway in order to short the warrants. There's no warrant exclusive options contract. So that's a little difficult for me. So that's my position there. But that's a very good question. Hey, Hadouken, what's up, man? Any thoughts on potential acquisition targets? I don't right now, actually. I mean, there were the PayPal rumors a little bit, a little ways back. I know, was it Fox? I think Fox and Flask said something about that. Potentially PayPal being an acquisition target. I could see something like I was curious about that because I thought perhaps something like eBay made sense because I looked at what they're trying to do with the trading card stuff, and I was like, it would be really great if, as GameStop, like if you could just log in to their you could just log into GameStop's own platform, like you could do power packs, and then just like you immediately could just sell it. That would be excellent. Hey, have a good night, Agent GB1. Thanks for staying up, man. It was really great to talk to you. Very great question to start things off. I hope that was helpful for you. We'll see you next time, man. Have a good night. Yeah, so it would be great to have some sort of finance package. Some sort of platform where they could just immediately flip inventory. I know they want to move into the the gaming collectible space. So I'm pretty sure at some point they're going to roll out a project where they just come forward and they announce they're going to do like Super Nintendo. They're going to offer like Pokemon cards. And then you might be able to do power packs, but you can like draw a Super Nintendo that's like vaulted in uh, vaulted over at Collector's World or something like that. But Dukin says Lemonade, maybe an American insurance company offers renters insurance, homeowners insurance, car insurance, pet insurance, term life insurance in the U.S., as well as contents and liability policies in Germany and the Netherlands, and insurance in France. Go the Berkshire route, and 1967 acquire National Indemnity, Omaha, Nebraska for 8.6 million. Yeah, right. They did insurance, and then the real ball they knocked out of the park was Geico, right? That was the big Berkshire home run, was Geico, if I remember correctly. One of the leading property casualty members, the Berkshire Hathaway Group of Insurance Company. Yep. Yeah, C6, man. That has indeed been done in capital markets, but it doesn't mean that they won't go ahead and get insurance. Great way to produce recurring revenue income. Yeah, absolutely. Pretty sure that's why. Um, Pretty sure that's why governments all over the world mandate that you participate in a social insurance fund. Yeah. Yeah, I mean Burry's idea is certainly interesting. In terms of what am I drinking and does it have red dye number 40? It does not have red dye number 40. It is zero sugar 7 Up. It is perfectly clear. There is no dye at all. It is from the EU. Let's see. Water, dióxido de anthracó, mesa oxynices, citric acid. I got that. Fusiques, aromatiques, hules, lemoniu. Okay, so like lemon essence, natural flavors of lemon. Okay, moscolemonu. Don't know what that is. Moscolemonu might be like lime, lemon and lime. Berithmistes. No dye. No dyes. Undo those dyes. What's up, Johnny? Sold calls for this week are printing dollars. Loving the free money, but I acknowledge I'm going to lose my shares one of these weeks after some news. Hey, man, if it happens, it happens, right? The dye is invisible. It's invisible dye, right? Yeah. Is Ryan basically doing what Sailor is doing? Asks Joto J Day. But instead of selling Bitcoin volatility, Cohen is selling GME vol. Basically acquire capital via Sailor method and deploy it with Berkshire method. Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good way to think of it, Jodo J Day. Yeah, basically, I think basically capital raises themselves are, ways to basically arbitrage GameStop volatility. although the entrance of the trade itself kind of kills GameStop volatility, but or dampens volatility to say the least. But I would imagine that these positions, any of these bond arbitrage positions that they fully take into account, whatever is really still pushing um, our volatility. And it's very clear, right? We can see here, with these recent events, let's say, that GameStop volatility is not dead. Um, Very interesting close here. I definitely thought we'd be going down. We close 4 man. We're gonna try to close above 24. How about that? Did not anticipate. That was a big step up there too. Right up over it. Maybe we slide down to like 23.90, 23.98 or 23.99 in the next minute. But if we zoom out a bit, is this period as dynamic, let's say, as what came during this prior mode? Not exactly, but it's still very dynamic, right? This obviously is very excitingly dynamic. But some stuff is still going on here, especially around earnings. Going into it, coming out of the hole, going into the hole, coming out of the hole. So Dukin says last week I sold 15 $22 puts expiring March 6th. Currently up 79%. Way to go, man. Way to go. Congrats to anybody if anybody sold those coming off that sub 23 dip there earlier in the week. GME volume is terrifying. It certainly gets terrifying when they do those offers, huh? What is our total volume here for today? Just 3 million. It's very low. It's going to be our daily volume. Well, there'll probably be a big order on the close. So we'll probably get like 4.5, 5 mil probably. What's dark pool volume on the day? Honestly, comparatively low. 43% is comparatively low. And it's still high, but it's we've been used to seeing like 60 something, 70 something percent day after day after day here. Joto J says weekly volume bar isn't terrible. Let's take a peek. $24 million. Yeah, it's up versus the prior week. Just got all of our volume sort of front loaded. It was 70 million, 86 and 70 million up at this previous move over here. The top there. Yeah, it's still pretty low. It's on the lower side. Still looks like we're headed this way. Kind of go over here. Did it? Yeah, I guess so. That was not this week. That was last week. Yeah, last week probably would have been pretty similar to this week, were it not for the day off. Let's see, offset wise, how are we doing? Yeah. Well, we're gonna put something like this this offset move here to the test. Should mean we try to slip in, I think, under something like these closes over here. So this is high-low close over 3. Think we just move it to, we just do closing price. Similar, but slightly different. Try to fit in under here. So this would say overall, yeah, basically going into earnings. See, notice how even, despite how stuff got crazy in earnings here. Yeah, what is this? Yeah, then that's the down, 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 down. Yeah, this bottom here is, yeah, despite this spike all the way back here, closing price still very low. So I imagine they'll try to fit us right into here for a little bit. We still stayed under it, right? Even though we got this little recovery, we still stayed under this curve here. So interesting to see that. Yeah, I was honestly taking a look at the Kitty PMO. Daphne, great name by the way. Daphne. Yeah, earlier this week. And I was playing around with it a little bit. What was I looking at? I was taking a look at the weekly. I know, Kitty takes a look at the daily, with a 55 signal line is what he has there. So we'll flip back and forth between these. So I have a configuration here where, so, I played around with the signal lines a little bit. I moved this one in about to 30, just to take a look at how well that mapped our particular periods, let's say on the weekly. Let's see if we edit this, just to see what that looked like, right? So if we bump it out here to, I think, what did I do here? So if you put it out here at the 50, at the 55, the idea, I suppose, is it'll tell you basically when this stuff is already happening. So for example, if you take a look here, right, it'll tell you when you're getting close, but not necessarily when you're going to have a big cross here. So basically, the actual cross in 2024 occurred when the massive move of Kitty's return actually happened. I mean, the line started to move up, but they started to move up here, and then they didn't cross. Then we got the cross down back here, right around earnings. And then that was it for that. Daily, again, if we use Kitty's lengths, daily says we come down still. That's more or less what that's saying. As we've been uncrossed with the top two lines for a while. Daily PMO is over the 0 line, and it looks like, yeah, these guys will probably come kind of hang out and then, I don't know, kind of slip underneath here, and then maybe we kind of cool down heading into earnings, maybe even coming out of earnings too. Maybe they just kind of let us slowly kind of drift down so that stuff doesn't get too dynamic for a bounce back up. What's up, Pro Styles? Two weeks till earnings announcement and run up. Enter in 2 weeks. Well, yeah, if they run us up, I suppose. 2 weeks is the announcement. Maybe they'll use that. They might use that as an opportunity to clear out those FTDs we were talking about. I mean, just as a helpful reminder, right? We've got those IJH FTDs, 2 million of them, that should be clearing between the leading up to the 16th. So 11, 12, 13, and then last day based on Bernoulli formula for clearing those out is going to be that Monday, the 16th. So that's right going to be around where they do the announcement. So they may use the announcement as the media coverage to go ahead and clear those out. Not a ton of FTDs on GameStop, but directly. But there is a rolling amount sustained across a number of days that should clear a little bit earlier, I think culminating on the 13th. So then maybe the 12th, 9th through the 12th, something like that. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, for now, it's really kind of steady as she goes. I haven't seen anything. I mean, we have stayed buoyant, but we haven't really done anything in terms of our price action, I think, to get us to change the way we're looking, to change my outlook as far as, I guess, what I think is going to play out basically going into earnings, which is more or less to say, not anticipating a breakout just yet. I don't think we get that until, for now, I don't think we get that until after earnings. I'll try to, I guess, think in terms of ways in which the earnings report might be a surprise, but yeah, with the Bitcoin sort of unrealized losses that have to be reported, that's definitely not going to look great. The projections are typically sky high as they are. And I think, there's likely that suspicion is that those lows in early April last year, after earnings proper, may have been swap entries or swap rolls. So if that's the case, and those need to be rolled, right? 53-week short swaps that need to be rolled. Things may stay suppressed into, say, into April. Part of the question is when will Cohen go ahead, and Cohen and company will go ahead and announce his pay package thing. That's going to be used as a catalyst. I imagine a bullish catalyst, but anyone's guess. It's really going to depend on the cycles, I think. So yeah, that's steady as she goes. Price action wise, cyclical wise, again, nothing seems to be breaking my estimations for now. A little bit for those of you maybe who joined a little bit later, you have some time to go back, right? So Agent JB1 asked a pretty involved question about what money is. So, if you're interested in, I guess, a more philosophical explanation of what it is and how it works and such, then um, yeah, then maybe you have a chance to check that out. Yeah, that's gonna, I think, bring us to a close for today and this weekend. Continue to stay the course. That's certainly my outlook heading into this week. For those of you, of course, commemorating Lenten tide, have a blessed season of fasting. Um, and yeah, we'll look forward to have a great weekend. And we'll see you guys. Yeah, for fresh set of data. See what's going on, maybe with some of this options data going into Monday. See what's going to happen with the rest of the OI for this 2350 and this 24 position. See if some interesting decisions had to be made there going into next week. Be looking at that on Monday. So look forward to seeing you guys then, and yeah, seeing you guys throughout the week next week. So thanks very much, and yeah, we'll see you guys. Yeah, Merger Monday coming up. Yeah, yeah, we'll see you.